Thank you for joining us to discuss surprising ways to delight your donors with forms. If you are new to Jotform, welcome. Jotform offers a suite of no-code solutions designed to help organizations collect, share, and manage their data. It all starts with our incredibly powerful drag and drop form builder. I'm grateful to have two of my colleagues joining us today. Griffin from our marketing team and Lauren from our customer success team are on hand to answer your questions. We also have a very special guest, Becky Dudley, database manager from United Way Roanoke Valley. Becky has kindly offered to share how she is using forms to engage donors and sponsors, as well as streamline processes behind the scenes. We're going to pack a lot of great information into this webinar, and we'll be recording it for your future reference. So let's get started. Here's a quick overview of today's topics. First, we'll share some form tweaks to increase engagement. Next, we'll discuss creative ways to thank your donors. Then we'll highlight ways to use automation to support donors and staff. After that, Becky will share her experiences and tips she's learned along the way. At the end, we'll share some resources for those of you who want to go deeper. And then we'll wrap up with a little Q&A. Let's dive in. The easiest way to please your donors is to keep your ask simple. Whenever possible, limit your form to no more than 5 fields. If you really want to gather more information, consider linking to another form. Capture the data you need most in the first form and give people the option to provide more information by filling out an additional form. Another way to delight donors is by making them feel good about the action you want them to take. Instead of using submit, enter, or another generic call to action, consider crafting something more specific, creative, and relevant to your cause. These two may seem obvious, but there's some subtlety here. With all due respect to my friends in sales, most people don't want to be called by a salesperson. Requiring phone numbers can result in people entering fake numbers that pollute your database. If you've got to have a phone number, explain why. Let form fillers know you'll be texting their registration or donation confirmation, whatever it is. Otherwise, even your most loyal supporters may abandon your form. Next, open-ended feedback. Blank spaces may work for Taylor Swift, but if someone just wants to make a quick donation or sign up for your newsletter, it creates a roadblock. Ask yourself, who will comb through all that text to find relevant information? Will you have time to respond to the feedback? Maybe you can position your question using multiple choice to pinpoint new ideas or a new direction. Let's look at a real-world example. Some forms are all business, and sometimes that's what you need, but there's a fine line between brevity and lacking direction. First and foremost, your form language should welcome visitors. Offering multiple options to sign in may seem convenient, but it can create confusion. If the entry returns an error, your donor won't know if it's the data they entered or the format in which they submitted it that caused the error. And can we recognize that everyone, even the digital natives among us, forget a password from time to time? Instead of emphasizing the gap, offer a bridge. Finally, when the donor submits their form, make sure you say thank you. In a perfect world, thank yous are personalized, highlight the impact of the gift, or extend a special invitation. Consider redirecting your form fillers to a special resource, member portal, or related app to demonstrate your gratitude. A quick note about automation before I pass the baton to Becky, who is herself a shining example of how automation helps nonprofits maximize their missions. Emails, reminders, follow-ups, and campaign management all take valuable time away from your day. The more you digitize and embrace the tools that can automate routine tasks, the more time you'll have for strategic efforts and making an impact. Okay, at this point, I'd like to introduce Becky Dudley, Database Manager for the United Way of Roanoke Valley. Becky has helped countless coworkers and community members through her use of online forms, I am truly delighted to have her here today. Thank you for joining us, Becky, to share your Jotform journey. Take it away.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. Some of the things that you mentioned are actually part of our trial and error experience with Jotform, things that we've learned along the way, especially with open-ended information, just big old gaping text fields where people can include their whole life story. Um, and I'm actually going to show some examples of where that didn't work for us and how it didn't work for us. And I'm going to show some examples of forms that we use to gather information for events, for volunteer activities, all kinds of ways to engage our donors without just asking them for money. One of the things that we are trying to do as an organization is increase the type of touch points that we have with our donors. And Jotform has helped us do that because we can use it for a variety of volunteer activities, for events. I think the forms look nicer, they're cleaner. The other thing that I like is that our staff members can make their own forms instead of constantly having to depend on somebody else. They actually have autonomy and they can create forms that are meaningful to them, and that look great for the audience that they're trying to work with, which is it increases staff satisfaction. The likelihood of getting the forms completed is even higher. So we've just had really, really good experiences with that. The first form that I'm going to talk about is for our golf tournament. This was the first form that I ever did for a large fundraising event, and I really wanted it to look a certain way. And let me share my screen so you can see it. So I don't have any graphic design experience. In my former life, I was an English major, and then I moved over to IT many years ago, and I have no sense of color or style. This is a Jotform template that I modified. I didn't have to do anything except find a really nice landscape photo from last year's golf tournament. That was all I had to do. And then I was able to make this really nice player registration form. Here's the thing I like about Jotform. I can use one form to rule them all. Our donor database is great. It's got a place where you can sign up for events. However, it does not have as much functionality. I don't have a way to build in as many choices. So here's my registration form. The top part just says, hey, this is what you're signing up for. This is what you're going to get. Then we get straight to, how do you want to pay? Well, I've got three different options here. And so the donor has, or the attendee has the option of choosing how they want to pay, and that is going to affect how they register. Some of our folks were sponsors, and so they got a free team. And what that meant was we didn't need to bill them for anything. All they needed to do was fill out this form so we knew who was going to be playing golf that day. Um, One of the things that Lainey brought up that I think is really important is people hate giving out their phone numbers, and I do too. Please don't call me. I don't want to hear anybody on the phone. However, we needed a phone number to let people know if we were canceling due to bad weather. And so we made sure to explain that so people knew, hey, we're not going to call you and drive you crazy. We're just going to let you know if we think you might get struck by lightning on the day of the game. So that way people, we could tell them right away, hey, we're going to have to reschedule. So that was really nice. We had a place for the team names and the player names. So one of the things that I really, really like about this form is that I had all of my information go straight into a Google Sheet, because Google Sheets is one of the applications that Jotform integrates with. And so for my folks who were trying to keep track of the teams and make sure that we had all the players' names for every team, they were able to open that spreadsheet anytime they wanted. I wasn't using a Jotform license. Didn't matter if they could log into Jotform or not, because everybody can use Google Sheets. It's free. So they were able to get to that information directly without asking anybody to give them a copy. The other thing that I really liked about this is Jotform has this cool feature called digest emails. So let's say that you have somebody who doesn't necessarily care about all the names of the players, or, you know, who's registered, who's read, and who's paid. They just need to know how many people have signed up. I was able to send digest emails out every Friday, and it let people know, hey, this is what's changed since last week. And here's how many people we've got right now. And the good thing about that is when they were preparing and ordering swag bags, when they were making sure we had enough food for the caterer because lunch was provided, they were able to just use those digest emails. They were totally automated. Nobody had to ask me for it. That just kind of eliminates a lot of the stress. Oh my gosh, I've got to remember to send this email, and I've got to make sure to do it by 2 o'clock on Friday. I didn't have to. It just went out. It was magic. So I really liked that. Another thing that we use are the PDF forms. So I had two things with this Jotform. One, if somebody chose Bill Me, the automated email that I sent actually was an invoice. And it said at the top of the email, please consider this your invoice. Well, one of the things we learned about this is that the folks registering are not the same people who are going to be mailing the check. And that invoice, that email that said, please consider this an invoice, they didn't read that. I don't know what they did with the email, but they didn't forward it to the billing contact. So one of the things that we do now for our events when we create a registration page is we also have, if you are registering on behalf of an organization, who is your billing contact? What is their name and what is their email address? And then when the person who is making the order, or, scheduling that, yes, we're going to attend, when they press submit, I have two emails go out. I have one going out to the registrant, letting them know, hey, you've registered. There's a notice on that that says, hey, a copy of this has also been sent to your designated billing contact. And then the designated billing contact also gets a copy of the invoice. We make sure to put contact information at the bottom. So if anybody has questions, or maybe they need additional copies of the invoice, or whatever, they actually have a person. They've got my email address. They know they can hit me up anytime. And that brings me to the PDF forms. I have a PDF form being generated in Jotform with every event submission that is basically an invoice that I can reprint anytime on the fly. I can send it, I can mail it, I can fax it, I can do whatever people need. But the most important thing is we're not making invoices by hand, which is what we were doing in the past. It's really easy to forget to bill people for things when you have to open up Microsoft Word and typey and do an invoice. So this way it's just automagical, and people are happy about that. We're happy about it. Our finance department is really small, probably just like every single nonprofit who's on this call. So we don't have a bunch of people to do all these little individual things. We need to automate as much as possible. So this was the first big form I did, that had a lot of different moving pieces. It turned out great. It was a huge success. We will be using this for our next golf tournament, and I'm trying to think. We have used Jotform for every single event application since. We no longer use our donor database for this because it's just so seamless and it's so easy. So I want to show you another form that is totally different. It is not directed at our donors. It is directed, it's kind of at the community. So this is a Roanoke City Schools application. They are one of our partner agencies. And one of the things that we don't talk about as nonprofits, we're so worried about fundraising, that one of the things that's really important to talk about is what are some backdoor ways you can show your usefulness and your relevance in the community? How can you help the folks around you, whether they're at schools or other nonprofits? And one of the things that we try to do at United Way is we want to be collaborative. So we do a lot of things with Roanoke City Schools, with early education. And one of the things that they did is they asked us, hey, could you put our kindergarten application in Jotform? And I was like, oh, yes, we can. um, and so this is the form. It is everything that you think a school application would be. It's huge, because they've got to gather so much information. But one of the things that I think is really cool is if you're wondering, hey, is Jotform going to handle the load of a bunch of applications? Absolutely. We have a whole city using this form. Um, so it's really nice to know that if you build something like this and it's important and it can't crash and it has to work, because it's really embarrassing if the school's application for kindergarten isn't working. We've had no problems. It's seamless. Parents haven't complained. And one of the reasons that I think parents have had really good experiences, I'm going to hop over here and just show you. So one of the things I like about Jotform is that I have the option to use something called an accessibility widget. I don't know who's going to be filling out these forms. It's basically any person in the city. These aren't our donors. These are just totally random people. And one of the things that I love about Jotform is that I can use an accessibility widget, and it lets me know, hey, this field's not a great idea. It's not very accessible. Um, I have the example right here. This widget may limit the accessibility of your form. Okay, so I know that the signature field may be problematic for some people. So what I did is I let the school system know that, and I said, hey, I'm going to add a field where someone can type their name, because not everyone is going to be able to sign the form. I loved having that warning. I am a database person. I am not a web person. Um, I'm used to doing everything behind the scenes, and I don't mess around with web stuff really ever. And so having that accessibility widget just helped me know that I was actually meeting the needs of the people who were filling out that form. Now, the users don't ever see that. The people filling out the form, oh, they do. They see that it's accessibility enabled, but they don't see the behind the scenes part of it. The other thing that I think is really important to note here is that this is a HIPAA compliant form. Um, Jotform offers HIPAA compliance. And for us, because we gather a lot of people's personal and private information, through applications for our community healthcare workers, and, for example, this application, we like having the HIPAA compliance because that lets us know we are protecting people's data. We are being good stewards of their private information. I want people to feel confident when they fill out a form for kindergarten, because this is a big deal. So I've got the little logo right there so they know, okay, this is HIPAA compliant. My data is being protected. I put this even on our fundraising forms. And the reason I do that is because I want people to know we care about your data. We care about your personal information. I don't care if we can Google and get people's street addresses anywhere now, because we all know we can. um, but I want people to know that that stuff isn't being spread out into the universe by United Way Roanoke Valley. So I really like that confidence that it gives us. It has made us more comfortable using Jotform. And I think users like to see that too when they're filling out a form. The other thing that was really nice about this is it allowed us to build that partnership with Roanoke City. The only cost to us was I did give one license to one of the users from Roanoke City. So it cost us a license. And then because we're using Jotform Enterprise, I have something set up called Teams. And I have a team set up just for Roanoke City Schools. And the only people who have access to that is our person from Roanoke City Schools and me. This ensures privacy. Our data is segregated out. We don't have everything mixed all together. It protects, again, just parents' privacy and the students' privacy. And we feel like we can, that's something that we really want to make sure that people know we're not, everybody at United Way Roanoke Valley can't log in and look at all the kids who are applying for kindergarten this year. Not that we would have time, but that's not the point. The point is about the integrity. So I like that we have been able to use this to build a partnership in the community. Roanoke City Public Schools does do a workplace campaign. So this is just another way to show, hey, these are the things United Way Roanoke Valley does in your community to be helpful. So it's another way to talk about us without sending out a bunch of emails that say, hey, give us money, we're wonderful. I mean, we are, but that's Then the next form I want to talk about is one that I am really proud of. This is another form that we're using in the community. This is our centennial. We are 100 years old this year. And this is our 100 Heroes application. So I love this application for two reasons. One, I don't ever read instructions. So everything that I do in Jotform is on the fly. And that's a terrible thing to admit because I work in IT and I tell everybody else, why haven't you read the instructions? But it's just hard sometimes because we're all in a hurry and we just want to get stuff done. So I needed to do a 100 Heroes application. And this is a way for people in the community to nominate a hero. We are going to choose, I think we're choosing 100 of them, and they're getting to be in a parade at the baseball game, and it's kind of cool. But I wanted this form to look really slick because, again, it's going out into the community. I wanted it to look fun. I wanted it to be sort of inspiring. I just grabbed another one of these landscape-sized photos from our graphic designer, took some photos, and then we have a photographer who takes photos for us. I grabbed one of these photos. I used a Jotform template. I modified the background a little bit, put our logo up here, and look at how nice this is. I'm really proud of it. And the other thing that I'm incredibly proud of is how nice it looks on a mobile device. And the reason that I was able to see that, I actually didn't have to do anything. Jotform has a preview option. And so I can preview it on a tablet, if I can click fast enough. I can preview it on a phone. I can preview it on a tablet. And I can see what it looks like on a desktop. And so that's really nice because, again, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not a graphic designer. So I want to make sure that whatever I'm putting out there, first of all, if people are using a phone, that it's readable. But second of all, I want it to look fun because part of how we engage with our donors is we're trying to build interest. So if this form looks alive and it's exciting, then hopefully when people open it, it's going to motivate them to fill out the forms. Another thing that I wanted to talk about here that's really cool is Jotform integrates with Constant Contact. So Jotform integrates with a million different things, but a lot of United Ways use Constant Contact because it also integrates with our donor database. So the nice thing about that is I can actually take one of these forms and I can have the data sent to Constant Contact. We don't push for email for phone numbers a lot, but we do push for email addresses. And one of the reasons why we make email addresses required is, of course, in case we need to get back in touch with the person. But then the other thing that helps us is it's all about those community touch points. It's all about letting people know what we're doing, again, without asking them for money. And the great thing about Jotform is the forms are so easy to fill out. I usually get a ton of responses. Our unsubscribe rate is really, really low. And so that lets me know when we take these emails and we put them in constant contact, these folks aren't angry. They're happy to get newsletters. But I think because most of the information is news and it's not solicitation. So that's another thing to keep in mind with the data that you gather from Jotform. As you're engaging with your potential donors, think about how you're going to engage with them. Every email should not be an opportunity to ask for more money, although we know we need the money, but you can't do that. So just keep that in mind. I want to show you all an example of a form failure and a form success. Because one of the things that you are going to learn as you use Jotform, especially if you are using it to gather data that is important, you're going to learn that sometimes when you build a form, the way that you thought it would work doesn't actually work in the real world. This is one of the first forms that we built, so we didn't know really anything about how we were going to use the data. We have something called community healthcare workers. And my guess is probably a lot of the people on the call, since this is for a lot of nonprofits, probably most of you already know what a community healthcare worker is. These are folks who are like paraprofessionals. They are not doctors or nurses, but they're out in the community and they are helping people get access to medical services, housing, if they need food, if they are having trouble getting a bill taken care of, if they're in danger of being homeless. So community healthcare workers are really important, but this is kind of a relatively new idea in a lot of localities. And so one of the things that we have to think about is if we can't document the need and we can't show what our CHWs are doing, we can't get funding for it. We need this information for grant applications, and we also need this information to share with our donors so that they know, hey, this is what your money is going toward. This is what you're helping with. So this was our first community healthcare worker form. And we've got our contact name, which is the person that the CHW worked with. Okay, everything looks pretty good here. First name, last name, location of contact. It's a free text field. We serve a specific area. I might have done that a little differently because people can't always spell the name of the city where they live. Typing counts. So, but again, not a big deal. Date of contact, hey, it's a date field. CHW is a drop down. We've got gender, ethnicity, age range. Here is the problem. Specific descriptions from interactions with the individual or group. Well, this is a free text field. This is a reporting train wreck because nobody will type keywords exactly the same. Nobody will be sure to type in vaccination event because we were doing some COVID clinics. People don't use exactly the same phrases to describe training. Feedback, again, it goes back to what Lainey said. Who's going to read that? Are you going to have time for someone to read that? We have 6,000 of these forms submitted. We're actually sitting on a little over 6,000 forms. So, and that's cool because that shows you that Jotform will handle a serious load of forms. We're able to export the data, we can download it, we can manipulate it. Jotform doesn't crash when people are trying to fill out the form. So it's wonderful that the software is that robust and that our CHWs just have a shortcut on their tablet. They fill it in, press submit, and they move on. However, we're having trouble getting data because so much of this is free text. And so one of the things that we've talked about is, okay, we don't want to do a form like this in the future. We want to make sure to have drop down boxes. We want to make sure. Now, of course, people may have other that they need to put in, and Jotform allows for that. There's always going to be an other, a situation that doesn't necessarily just fit nice and neatly into the application, but Jotform does allow for that. And so you can do drop down choices. But if the user still needs to type a circumstance that doesn't fit into any of those little categories, that's okay. You've got the option to do it. So this is a form failure, which is a shame because, again, we have over 6,000 of them. But I want to show you how we have improved and what we've learned from that mistake. So this is a new form for us. It's getting ready to be released out into the wild. And this is a form that allows us to track data indicators for our CHWs. So not all of the community healthcare workers work through United Way. They may work through our local health department. They may work through our local hospital. So what that means is we have a bunch of different agency partners out here with community healthcare workers, and we want to gather that data so that we know how well this is working in the field. And then we all have a little partnership group together called Healthy Roanoke Valley, where we meet and share the information and talk about what's working, what changes we need to make. But again, that all hinges back on gathering good data. So this is our new form, and agencies basically can fill out the information. So HRV Hub, these are all the members of Healthy Roanoke Valley, and they fill out the information quarterly, just some basic contact information. And then we've got some columns here with some choices. Incoming referrals means people who have been sent directly to them, and outgoing means folks that the CHW have sent to another agency or another location. We've got categories here. So if they got 25 incoming referrals for this, they can log that information. Then we can report on this information and we can know what problem areas are in the valley. For example, we know that evictions have gone up in our area. And so legal might stay fairly high for quite some time, but that's only true this year. Maybe something will be different next year. And by capturing all this data and by doing it quarterly, hopefully when trends are happening in the valley, we know what's going on and we can pivot and find supports for people because it really matters. And this is not static. This stuff changes. So we want to be able to kind of keep our finger on the pulse. I hate that expression, but it's a good way to describe it. What's going on right now, so that we're always relevant. So the definitions and examples here are from some forms that all of the community partners use. And I just want to highlight, I mean, it's a lot, it's 34 pages. But here's the thing that's really nice about this. We were able to embed this PDF. All of the community healthcare workers have gotten this information. I am sure they all have a link to this PDF somewhere. But these people are out in the field. They don't carry, they don't have little notebooks that they carry with them. So the nice thing about having this embedded PDF is it's always right there, and it explains what items are, hey, food assistance. Well, what qualifies as food assistance? And I know that sounds crazy, but one of the problems that we're having is every agency might define things a little differently. So we need to have a set of terms that we can all agree on. And that leads me to the next grouping here. So we've got categories: enrolled, reached, goals completed. And then we have this weird little box down here. How do you define the categories for your input counts? Well, the reason we've got this here is because we've got two different kinds of community healthcare workers. We have some who are in a clinical setting, like at my doctor's office. And then we have some that are just out in the community. They may spend time at different agencies. They may actually meet up with clients at health fairs or the public library, or just a random variety of places. Well, if I'm a clinical CHW, enrolled means something totally different than for a community, a community-based healthcare worker. So one of the things that we are trying to work toward is making sure that we have good definitions and that everyone is on the same page. And we may have to segment out some of that data, but we've got these definitions. So just something that we are trying to flesh out and work on together. I want to say we have it's over 100 different places involved in Healthy Roanoke Valley. So it's a lot of people and a lot of people in meetings. So this just kind of helps things go smoothly. So this is what I would consider an example of a form success. And what does that mean? Well, if you haven't seen Jotform's automated reports, they are fabulous. I have an example of one. This is one that we have a health department in another county who use Jotform for their healthcare assessment. It's basically about healthcare accessibility. And it's called Community Health Assessment. Some of you are going to know what this is already because this happens everywhere. It's not unique to Virginia. It's not unique to our area. When the data is gathered correctly, Jotform makes reports like this. And it's fabulous because you do nothing. You click a button. It's magical. It's something that you can use for a presentation. You can send it to people on the fly. You can run it as often as you need it because, again, this data may change. And so one of the things that the person who was doing this community health assessment was working on is making sure that the number of responses that she got matched the population of the community, that it was as diverse as the people in our community. And so she would run this report in an ongoing sort of, she would run it weekly, she would run it constantly, basically just to go through here and see, okay, are we getting a good grouping of incomes? We're not just getting the same people. We were sending interns out in the field. I believe that's what she was doing. Okay, so we have ethnicities. Does this adequately represent the ethnicity in the county where she was working? And I'll be honest, I don't know anything about the demographics of this county because it's not in our footprint and it's not one of the counties that we work with. But she used this constantly. And as she was running this report, if she noticed that some of the numbers were not adequately reflecting different members of the community, she would tell her interns, okay, you need to make sure to target more people in this demographic. Here are some events that are going on. You can survey those people at this event. So that's the cool thing. The reports make you look really fancy without doing a lot of work. But the other thing is because they generate automatically, you can use them constantly. You don't have to keep clicking through spreadsheets. Anytime you can avoid digging through an Excel spreadsheet or trying to make your own charts, anytime you can do that, it's wonderful. So this is an example of what a successful report would look like when you build your forms the right way. And I think it's pretty awesome. So one of the last things I just want to show you really quickly, because I think this is an indicator of how good Jotform can be in a pinch, because some of us are asked to do things that have nothing to do with our job description, and that is true at a nonprofit, and it's just the way it is because there aren't enough of us. And most of our funding does go to our programs. This is a digital program. There is nothing on here to purchase anything, or there is a nice little donation link at the bottom. But this is a digital program that we made. It was during COVID, and we didn't want people passing out a bunch of papers. So Jotform has a QR code feature. When you build your form, it's got a QR code. You don't have to do anything, it's already there. We printed out the QR codes on posters. We distributed them around the conference center. And we just had this lovely little digital program that let people know who the speakers were, what was going on. And I know there's a lot of other products out there that'll do this. Some of them are free, some you pay for, and that's great. But I had one day's notice. So I thought, oh, we can do this in Jotform. And again, this was just a template that I modified. This graphic was created in Canva. We saved the graphic as a PNG, and I imported it into Jotform. And look at how pretty this is. We knew that people were going to be using it on their phones, so I used the previewer to make sure that it really looked good on a phone. And this was just something that we created, and we liked this template so much that instead of using anything else, because our users found this so accessible, that the person who was doing these events, he continued to make all of his digital programs through Jotform because it always worked. He didn't have any problems, and he knew how to manipulate it. So I like this because I think it speaks to just how nice it is when a user tries something and they're just happy with it. And so he took this and cloned it and used it over and over again. I think probably for the next 2 years. So that's pretty awesome. And I just thought it was interesting to show something that Jotform does that you might not think about, because in a pinch, it's great for users to be able to feel like they have that autonomy and they can make something. That is the overview of all the forms that I have.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Becky. I just sit here in awe at everything that you have done and everything you continue to do and all the ways that you have been utilizing Jotform. So thank you so much for sharing your experience and sharing everything you've done. Really, really proud. You should be absolutely proud of everything you've put together. And I'm sure there are a lot of people who are hearing you, and it's resonating with them that there's so much that you have to do in any given day. And so the more you can automate, the better. So if anybody is interested in digging deeper into all this or is inspired by what Becky shared, if you want to learn more about her journey, I encourage you to read our case study interview with her. You can also dig into the details of leveraging no-code forms and automation on our white papers. They cover a range of different topics, including specific tips specifically for nonprofits. And if you'd like to learn from others who are using Jotform Enterprise, we have case studies with a wide range of organizations, including many other nonprofits. They're all mentioned there in the links. And then if you're curious about building a form from a template, as Becky mentioned, Jotform has more than 10,000 free templates you can use. Feel free to browse the library on our website. That way you can try Jotform for free with minimal time and minimal effort. And finally, as I mentioned at the beginning, this webinar is being recorded and it'll be posted to our YouTube channel. So be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Okay, so that's it for resources at this point. I'd like to just check in real quick with Griffin, see if we have any questions from the audience.
Yeah, totally. We've actually got one specific one here for Becky from the chat. So we'll start off with that one. The question is, what donor database do you have, and how do you get the data from Jotform to the database to update things like names, addresses, etc.?
Ooh, okay. This is one of my favorite questions because I'm a database nerd. We have Andar, which is, what a lot of United Ways have. I export CSV files from Jotform. Great thing is you can actually rename the fields on the back end in Jotform so that when you export that information, your export file is already built. And then I use Andar's data import tool to hoover the data into Andar. Andar does allow us to delete and add things. So if it is an existing donor, and we've done this with our board members, as we ask them every year, please give us email, phone number, address, have these things changed. And then I use the add delete feature in Andar to update my data so that we actually have good contact information for our board. I use it with all of the fundraising and volunteer forms. I import all of it into Andar. The thing you have to watch for is you have to watch how people build the forms. Make sure that they don't make name a text field. It needs to be first name, last name, because you want to get that one-to-one relationship. But other than that, importing has been a breeze.
Great. Yeah, we have a couple more here. So next question is going to be, I'm new to forms, so what is the best and fastest way to learn how to really get my forms out there without them being spammy or salesy?
So I can just comment really quickly. So as Becky mentioned, Jotform enables you to build and embed codes on your website. You can share them with a QR code. There's also links built in to share with social. You're allowed to build a no-code app. So there's lots of different ways to get your forms out there. Becky, if you have anything to add, I'm totally open to that. But I loved your comment about that every form and every ask shouldn't be an ask for a donation. I thought that was really valuable.
QR codes, people love QR codes. I'm not sure why. I think I'm not part of the demographic because I'm old, but people love QR codes. So one of the most successful things we've done is just printing those QR codes and having them around. We've used them on table tents with links to a fundraising form. And obviously, if it's an event for United Way, they should expect to have a QR code to raise money for United Way. So yeah, that has really probably been one of the best and most popular things for us.
Great. Yeah, the QR code feature is super cool, super helpful. We've got one more specific one here for you, Becky, I believe, and that is how has using Jot Forms enhanced your relationships with workplace fundraising?
So one of the things that has been really hard, not just for us, it's for every nonprofit, but a lot of United Ways are noticing that workplace campaigns are not as popular as they used to be. And so one of the things that we have used Jotform to do is to do different kinds of fundraising. For example, we have workplaces who are interested in a volunteer fundraising or like a volunteer type activity that's not necessarily a fundraising activity. So we use this for our volunteer forms. We also use Jotform to do sort of like pop-up fundraisers. For example, we've got one called Read United, and we've sent it out to the workplaces. And this is where they can choose from 6 or 7 different books that our early education crew is going to distribute to children at events. And there's an activity associated with each book. And so it's just helped us reach donors in a different way. And it's helped us come up with different ways to meet organizations' needs. They're not going to run a workplace campaign. They've already said they're not going to run one. So we needed a different way to help them, participate and be part of the community because people still want to give. They just want to give in different ways. Jotform has given us that versatility.
I also wanted to jump in and just call out that Nathaniel had shared in the Q&A chat about our Salesforce integration. This is another super helpful tool. Kind of off of what Becky said about updating data. In the Salesforce integration, there is an option when you've authenticated your account to choose to update existing leads or contacts or an object in Salesforce. So that's a really quick and easy way to automate updating that information for, in Nathaniel's example, the volunteer forms. So another great example out there. There's endless ones, it feels.
Great. Yeah, and I think we can wrap up with this one last question here. And that would be what motivated your organization to start using Jotform?
Well, I was desperate. I needed something to make a form really fast. And I remember it was during the pandemic, and I can't remember what the form was. And I found Jotform, and the reason that I chose Jotform is because the free version had all the functionality that I needed, and there weren't any gotchas, and it actually worked. It worked like it was supposed to work, and we loved it. And then we wanted to use it for something called Smart to Start. It was a preschool application where we actually helped families find slots in preschools. And I had to purchase bronze then, I think, at that point, because we were getting so many submissions. But again, free version was working fine. We were just getting so many submissions. And then I was getting requests from people, hey, we want to build this form and we want to build that form, and we want to use Jotform for COVID clinics. Well, in order to do that, you have to have the HIPAA compliant version, because we're asking people for health information that's private. And we got the HIPAA compliant portion, the little piece for Jotform. And then we started using it for kindergarten applications because we knew we had the HIPAA protection. And so we use it for healthcare fairs, anything like that, because we've got that piece. And again, this is all organic. This is driven by our need. Nobody pushed on us to buy stuff. When you start using Jotform, even if you're just using the free version, right away you start getting emails like you're part of the community. They treat you the same as a customer who has a full-blown license, like the information, the help files, all that stuff's available to everybody. And then what happened? The reason we finally switched to Enterprise is it was completely driven by all of the users. I have so many people wanting to create different kinds of forms that I needed to be able to separate them out into teams. People couldn't all be sharing one username and password. And then people couldn't find their forms, which was another benefit to having teams. It wasn't just being able to segment off the data. It was that we started having so many different kinds of forms that I needed to be able to put stuff into different teams so that people could collaborate and work together and find everything. So what I really like about Jotform is that our journey started organically based on a need. We went to the next tier based on our own needs. We weren't forced. We went to the next tier based on a need. Again, we weren't forced. There was no time when I was building forms at any of these different places, different points, that I got a message, oh, well, you can't do this because you haven't paid us $10,000. And I really like that, because I could allow our usage to determine what level I purchased instead of getting some kind of hard sell. So that was how we got here.
Awesome. That's super helpful. And that is going to wrap up the Q&A for today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Griffin. And thank you, Becky. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I hope you found the stories and ideas inspiring. I know Becky is always an inspiring person for me to listen to. So thank you again for